Hey, sorry about that, y'all. I had at some point gotten kicked off the audio. But welcome to today's Key Theta webinar. We are coming to you live on November 6th, 2025. If you are an NLC webinar first timer in the room, know that our Theta webinars get their name from the Creek word for learning. And today you're going to learn how to not treat your Grantmaker like an ATM from your instructor, Diane Leonard. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also thrilled that you could join us today. If you could follow along while I read the disclaimer aloud, this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law printed here. So this is just a friendly reminder that the webinar materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. If you wish to access any of the materials from today's webinar, as well as the recording once I post it tomorrow, you can find that in the courses section. I encourage you to check out the full courses section. We have a lot of great material on there. And then if you opt to tune into an NLC webinar in the future, know that you can do it by joining, clicking on that green banner in order to join. As long as you log in when there's a webinar happening, you will see that green banner at the top of the screen. We do ask that you join with listen-only capabilities because we are recording. It just helps to cut down on audio feedback. And then if you find that my voice is coming out of the wrong device, maybe you're trying to use your headphones, maybe you have a Bluetooth speaker, whatever the case may be, if you click on, I have a telephone icon, you might actually have like a headset icon, but if you click on that at the bottom of your screen, it'll bring up a list of your mic and speaker devices or just your speaker devices, and you can select the right output. We do, of course, encourage class participation, even if we asked you to join on mute. So we will primarily rely on the public chat to hear those questions. Sorry, guys. Okay. So we will primarily rely on the public chat in order to communicate during the webinar. So anything you would like to say or ask, or if you're having any tech support issues that I can maybe help you navigate through, just come down to the box that says send message to public chat, click in there, type what you would like to say, and then you can hit enter to send it in. If you don't yet have the public chat expanded, you could come up here to the messages panel, and public chat should be that first one right at the top for you. I also encourage you to check out the shared notes section. There's a lot of helpful links in there. There is one to the presentation slides, which I have also put into the chat for you. And then there's also one to a great resource that Diane has shared with you today as part of her presentation, which is the Grantmaker Relationship Guide. I just went ahead and put that into the chat once again. And then if you think we maybe missed a question or a comment along the way, feel free to use that little hand raise feature that's down in the bottom right. Okay, we'd love it if you took a moment to introduce yourselves in the chat. It's nice to see who all is present with us in the webinar. You could let us know your name, where you're tuning in from. It's cool to see all the different tribal nations that are represented, your work or your role in Indian country that maybe led you to today's webinar. Maybe you're just here for personal information. And then your tribal affiliation if you have one. You might be a tribal employee and not have tribal affiliation yourself. That is okay too. And then just a quick final note while you're introducing yourselves in the chat. Try your best not to click on the red menu panel that's all the way to the left-hand side of the screen. You might just have icons if yours isn't expanded, but just know that if you click on it, it's going to immediately take you to whatever it is that you clicked on the menu. It's not one of those where it'll be like, are you sure you want to leave the webinar? It won't do that. It's just going to pull you right out. So no worries if it happens. You can always just use that green banner to join in once again. But I just want to give you a heads up that that will happen if you click on it. So while you're introducing yourselves in the chat, it is with great pleasure that I introduce your webinar instructor for today, Diane Leonard. And Diane, I have made you presenter now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brooke. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of what I'm sure is a very full day to join me for this session. Don't treat your Grantmaker like an ATM. Thrilled to be with you, and I want to take just a brief moment and introduce myself so you know why it is that I love this topic and all things grants. It's because I started my career as a grant maker. It's true. I was on the other side. I was doing the tough work of working with our board and our committees, of reading every application that came in the door and making those tough decisions. There was never enough money to go around for all the great requests that came in. how would we decide which ones would be funded? Today's session is full of tips and suggestions based on how those decisions were made. I've now been on the grant seeking side and the grant training side for 20 years, helping organizations just like yours to take some of the stress out of grants and try to be as competitive as possible. Now, today's content is honestly, we picked these topics with the Native Learning Center months in advance. This could not be any more relevant today if we tried. Has anyone noticed, read about, experienced firsthand that grants have become increasingly competitive in this calendar year? Let me know in the chat why for yes. I have heard that. I have experienced it. I've seen it firsthand. Is anyone aware that the data tells us, based on how many applications are being submitted to grant makers of all shapes and sizes, that this is the hardest year in terms of the level of competitiveness? What that means is that by percentage, fewer applications are being funded because more applications are being submitted. Okay, I see, Kathy, that this is yep, you're reading about it. How is it that we stand out in this process? How is it that we still can succeed, that we can excel at grant seeking? By not treating our grant maker like an ATM. The words that we use, the words that we write, always important. That's what our grant award and our commitment to a funder is based on. That's how they know what we're going to do with their money. But it's all the stuff around and before we do the writing work that is going to help us stand out. So the reality is that today's session, I had those specific learning objectives just on the slide, but today's session is about strengthening your relationships with grant makers. Whatever shape or size or type of grant maker they are, the relationships, the connections, the contacts you have are going to be what help you stand out in proposal cycles that are literally 900 applications in a single quarter. For funders that it didn't used to be 900, last time it was 125. Right? The game is not the same. We have to think about how we stand out. So what I have on the screen for you now is the grant life cycle. These are our 5 basic best practices as it relates to grants. Today's topic is predominantly focusing on relationships. So the third item, because we're going to start at that noon, 12 o'clock position with readiness, which is really industry jargon for eligibility, overall competitiveness. Research is about finding the grant funders that are the best fit for you and for your funding needs and your priorities. Relationships isn't necessarily about having a cup of coffee, a mug of tea, something like that with a funder, but it's about making connections, having contacts. That's where we're going to be. The writing work, we use what we learn in research and in relationships in order to inform our writing, make it as customized to the funder as possible so that it will stand out in those piles of 900. And then because we do it all so well, the assumption is we will get some grant awards. We might do a bit of a celebration. It might be ringing the yellow dingy bell. It might be a grant happy dance. It will be something to celebrate the award, and we will move into management and reporting so that we can start all over again. Relationships. Yep, you're like, I'm going to be tired of you saying the word relationships, aren't I? Yes, absolutely. And part of why I'm so insistent on it, I just came back from the Grant Summit event in Baltimore. There were 800 plus grant professionals in one room with 500 more joining us virtually. That's a lot of grant people in one space. And we were all saying some version of the same thing. Whoa, this year has been unprecedented. Whoa, this year things are different. Whoa, this year, I know we've always been talking about like playing the game of chess, like grants. It's like the game of chess where playing with a number of different pieces, and it's very strategic, and the moves that other organizations or that other funders make would influence what we might take as our next move. Right. So yeah, it's like playing chess for grants. This year, we as grant seekers, we're still holding chess pieces in our hand, but we're not sure if we're playing with like a Candyland board or Chutes and Ladders or checkers. Not real sure, but we know we're still holding chess pieces. That's the kind of year this has been. And that was the universal agreement in the Grant Summit space. But there are things that we can do, best practices that are within our control. So I'm just going to give you these 3 things to remember. If this is the slide that you take back as your big learning from today, I wouldn't be mad about it. I'm going to help you understand all these in more detail, but these are the key things. We're not going to treat our grant makers like an ATM. We are going to think about how we express gratitude to our grant makers. Not just got the check, it cleared, thanks. Nope. How do we express our gratitude for the impact they're helping us to create? And we never, lastly, ever want our grant maker to be surprised by what they read in our reports, whether they're programmatic or financial reports. Surprise is not the emotion, is not the reaction that we want a grant maker to have when they read our reports. These 3 things will help us build a strong foundation for great grant maker relationships. Now, what does it really mean to treat a grant maker like an ATM? It's about feeling transactional. I would love for you to think about the last time that you went to an ATM machine. Whether you drove up to the ATM machine or you walked into the lobby of the bank, or it was like a standalone ATM in like a shopping plaza or a mall or in an airport. If everyone visualized themselves walking up towards the ATM or driving up towards the ATM, you probably got out your ATM card, your debit card. Maybe you pulled out a credit card, especially if you were doing international travel, you were trying to get out some money for the local currency. It might have been a credit card in your hand. But so you've got this card in your hand and you're approaching the ATM. And what do you expect to have happen? What should happen as a result? Like, Diane, this is very rhetorical. Yes, cash should come out of the machine. You're right. Yeah. Yep. Like, this is a forehead slap. You're like, this is not the lesson. No, it's not. But I wanted you to remember, why do you go to the ATM? Mine is that in cross-country season, my 16-year-old runs cross-country for her high school team, and like those events are piles of cash-only things. Cash only for an event shirt, cash only for the food, cash. I seem to need a lot of cash in my house in the fall. I'll be like, I thought I just got 20. Where'd that go? What do I have to do? I have to go back to the ATM. So now let's think about that as a grant maker. Your grant maker feels like an ATM if you only talk to them when it's time to ask for more money. You have your version of your grant debit card, your grant credit card in your hand, and you're like, I need to get some more money, so I'm here to talk to you, dear funder. I'm here to put in my new application. I'm here to fill out your form again. That is transactional. That makes the grant maker feel like an ATM. That does not make them feel like a collaborator or a funding partner. Doesn't make them feel like there's a trusting relationship or that there's a form of respect between the 2 organizations. Very transactional. You literally just walked up to the ATM because it was time to ask them for more grant money. Now, to be fair, I'm not saying that is definitely how your organization is treating your grant makers right now. You might say, Diane, absolutely not. This is not us. We are not treating our grant makers in a transactional way. I definitely, I'm not trying to say that this is what you're doing now. But I've seen a lot of really well-intentioned groups do this. And why would it happen? It would happen because there are lots of moving parts in your grant seeking strategy. You have many grant applications due. You have many grant reports that are due. And so sometimes our calendars and our commitments get the best of us. And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, this is due to the funder in like 30 days. And I haven't talked to them in 7 months, 10 months. Better reach out and talk to them. I get it. It happens. So how do we avoid it? We avoid it by, well, prioritizing stewardship. In fact, and I'm saying this so that I will not forget to somehow share this with you or for you to ask me, our team is literally putting the final touches on another download. It's in addition to the one that we gave you today. Today, you get the Grantmaker Relationship Guide. And we love it. We use everything we're going to talk about in there. But what we were finishing, it's getting very close to going up on our website, which means you can ask me for it or you can go to our website and download it for free. But our stewardship success checklist. We're like days away from having it live on the site. It's going to feel really familiar with what you're seeing today. Sorry we didn't have it in time for today's session, but I want to let you know that it's coming as a way to take this strategy that we're talking about. And if you like having checklists, this is for you. But it's totally free. It's just one of those things I'm like, I'm really sorry. It wasn't something we could align the stars for. But stewardship and what we're going to talk about, it's what it's all about. So when we think about stewardship, I will admit that it makes me feel like a fundraising professional, not a grant professional. Stewardship is a word that is usually used with individual fundraisers, major donors, corporate solicitations. Yeah, stewardship is used in those rooms all the time. But stewardship is an important part of the grant space, especially given that when we have this absolutely astronomical increase in application volume for funders of all shapes and sizes, something has to help have us stand out. Something has to help us rise above the piles of applications. So it's these relationships and the stewardship that we do with those we already have connections with. That's what's going to help set us apart. So what are some of the things that are, I think, the priority for you as a grant writer, a grant professional, an awesome member of the organization that has to work on grants? It's sort of like other duties as assigned. Regardless of your title or experience with grants, here are 3 things that you could consider that check the boxes for stewardship. The way you communicate, making them personalized communications, not generic e-blasts. Always think one-on-one. How can we personalize any type of communication we would want the Grantmaker to get? You might say, I would love for them to get our newsletter. Great. Don't subscribe them to the newsletter so that they automatically get it and it's generic. Take the newsletter. I'm guessing it's digital. It could be physical, but if it's digital, make sure that you get it. Somehow you have a digital copy of it. Maybe it's that you directly get it to your email. Then click forward, type in your Grantmaker's email address. I wanted to share our most recent newsletter. I think you might really like, and tell them the part you think that they really might like. So I wanted to pass it along. What, 2 minutes? Minute and a half? You want them to get the newsletter no matter what. They now feel like, oh, they were thinking about me. They were telling me what is relevant. It's sort of like the TLDR, too long, didn't read. You're telling them, hey, here's the thing that's most important. So that also makes them feel valued as a partner. Minute and a half, maybe 2. So that is one of my favorite, like kind of quick check the box stewardship ideas that it's not going to cost you Money takes you a tiny bit of time, and the way that you can help keep track of did you do it or not, have a list of your current grant makers. And so as you send a newsletter, and you don't have to do it every time, like if you're doing a monthly newsletter, you don't have to do it every month, maybe once a quarter. If there's something relevant that you want them to know, check them off. Keep track of who you're sending them to. All right, another idea, regular updates. Something that is not a required report, something that helps make them feel connected and engaged in your mission, in your programs, in your projects, in the services. Best if your outreach is something related to what they funded. So if you're like a big umbrella service organization and they funded hot meal delivery, let's make our updates be about food, addressing food insecurity, about increased nutrition within the hot meals that are being delivered, something related to that program versus say, I mean, the after school stuff is cool, but if that's not where their money went, that's not where we want to put our update focus. So what could the update be? It could be that you've got a photo of the program in action, a photo of meals being delivered, and you've got the photo because it's going to go up on your socials as a tribal organization, or it's going to go in the newsletter. Well, pretend like it's almost a press release. Hey, wanted to share this picture of our program in action, and like give them a little caption as if you were sending it along to a journalist, hoping that they would put it in their publication. You're trying to let them know that you're thinking about them. It's not a formal report. You're trying to do something that is beyond the transaction of, okay, we're ready for more money. In fact, this one, I just have to say, this one I love. I've got a little baby newspaper in my community. I'm in the Thousand Islands, far, far, far upstate New York, and we still have a print newspaper that comes out once a week. It's something silly, like $38 for the year. You get your 52 issues delivered directly to your door for $38 a year. But it's full of pictures, absolutely full of them. And honestly, it's the way that a lot of us read it. We're like, okay, so whose kids are in it and who got what award and what's happening? It's how all of us stay in touch. Way better than having to worry about, did I miss something on social? It's all right there in the TI Sun. And what they don't want, well, rarely, they don't want big check pictures. They want pictures of community members doing things. They want to be able to see their faces usually. They want to be able to identify like by name. They like to be able to say who's actually in it. But like the big check pictures are not what they fill their newspaper with. It's community members in action, things happening of all ages and across the community in lots of different ways. And so the thing that's really cool about it is that it's almost everything. Like as long as you meet their standards, it gets in. It's not like the old days where you'd write a press release and, oh, you would really hope that it would get in. The fun part about having your own information, your own photo, your own description that goes with it, you control where it can go. And so if you're like, hey, this is great, I'm going to put it up on socials, that means I should probably think about sending it to my funder. I control our media. I control our voice. We control what that looks like. So I really think that this is a spot. Again, if it's already happening, if you're using it for other purposes in the organization, take advantage of that and send it on to a Grantmaker as well. All right, and the third one. This is about boards, advisory committee, leadership, elders in the community, those who are well respected for the role that they play within your organization, for the leadership that they provide, the direction, the strategy. Folks like this are well connected. And you want to think about who are their connections? How can that help you communicate to grant makers? Maybe you say, Diane, I'm actually not the right one to send these personalized communications that you mentioned, or to send the photo with the like quick short description, like I was sending it into like the newspaper. Not me, shouldn't be me. That's okay. It could be board, leadership, advisory committee, community elder. You can make that your own. That still is something that is taking away that transactional relationship. I would love to ask you a question to which I hope you will give me a candid response. How many of you feel like, as lightweight as I tried to make those ideas, that they are still a capacity concern for you to get done? Candid answer, if you don't mind, in the public chat. Y for yes, I'm worried about having the capacity to do it. S, I'm sort of worried about the capacity. Nope, not worried about capacity. N, I've got this. Could you let me know how you're feeling about it? I really would appreciate your candid response for, like, is it a big capacity concern for you, or do you think that it's possible? No judgment in your answer. Just trying to get a quick temperature check for how it feels for you. Okay. So some not worried about capacity. Some a little worried, but think it could be possible. All right, so we've got the whole range represented right now in public chat. Appreciate the responses. So let's talk about some ways to maybe get around that, to think creatively around capacity. The grant team, totally industry jargon, but the grant team is really, it's about the group of people in your tribal organization that have a stake in seeing grants be successful. So you might feel like this is on your shoulders. Been there. Yep, was the only grant employee for the entire state of Michigan for my organization many years ago. And it felt like a lot of pressure. I was like, wait, I don't know everyone in all 82 counties of Michigan. And so I get that I feel like I'm by myself, but I've got to expand this definition. How can we make it a team of superheroes, not just one? So the idea of the grant team being, again, anyone that has a stake in seeing grants be successful, is it's not about the label. It's not about having a grant team t-shirt or a grant team, cheer to get everybody going, or definitely not about having a grant team meeting every Monday at noon. Nope, you don't have to do that. You could, depending on your organization, but I'm not saying that's what you have to have. Rather, I want you to have a group of people in the organization that understand that not only can they contribute in a meaningful way to the application itself, to the writing work, which is what most people think about when they think about grants. They think about the time we spend writing. I want this group thinking about the other stuff. How can they support the grant seeking work without having to write, unless they really want to write, in which case let them write. But that's not usually what they want. So instead, the ways that we can engage a grant team. Got a pretty hefty list here of things that grant makers can help with, or grant makers, that your grant team can help with as it relates to grant makers. It's a pretty diverse list of things here. So who would reach out to a grant maker, to a grant funder before you apply? You're like, oh, that one, you might say, that's me, got it, me, okay. But let's think about if the grant maker sends something to your organization, who are they sending it to? Are they sending it to someone in finance? Are they sending it to someone in leadership? Where is it going? So that's their outgoing communication to you. Now you can think about using that same pathway to go back to them, because that's a name that they know. It's a role that they recognize, even if it is contract type stuff, even if it is administrative type stuff for the grant. That gives you a rather clear path to go back to the grant maker for different stewardship opportunities, different stewardship engagement. If we think about who is sending things like a grant billing or a grant financial report, yeah, the connection that folks in your finance office might have, that also gives you an opportunity to think about, what is that pathway for communication? What do we know? Who do we talk to? Just because, air quotes, just the person receiving the communication is focused on your financials doesn't mean that they can't receive a programmatic update. Hey, we're so grateful for all of your support. And I know that normally what I'm sharing are our financial reports with you. I wanted to share this programmatic update showing you all these kids with their backpacks that were in part funded by your grant award. And please feel free to share with your colleagues. But I thought that you might appreciate seeing the work that to you is normally what we share in budgets. First of all, that person's going to be like, oh my gosh, they were really thinking about me and they wanted me to understand the impact. And cool. Hey, colleagues, did you see this? Forward off to everybody or like in the team chat. True stories. That's what can happen. The traditional thank you letters. Dear Grantmaker ABC, thank you so much for the grant of $75,000 that will support our after-school tutoring program. And no goods or services were provided in exchange for this this contribution. And we look forward to keeping in touch. Okay, that was a really awkward verbal version of the like standard IRS thank you letter, but you get the point. You got the check, you're saying thank you so that it meets their IRS requirements. They're like, yeah, proof. We gave them the grant. They didn't give us anything in exchange. File it. Good. Well, who's processing that in your organization? Who's making sure that those go out? They are a great person to help ensure that every time it's a grant maker, not like an individual in the community. Hey, I'm going to pull this letter. Could we have someone else do a little handwritten blurb here in the bottom right-hand corner so that it feels more personal? Or maybe they're empowered to write the little blurb on the bottom right-hand corner just to say, hey, wanted to say thanks again. Something that lets them know that this is not only an automated kick it out the door IRS thank you. Maybe it's the person on your team who's in charge of socials. They are a great resource for understanding what's the best way to tag a grant maker if you're posting something. Is it better to put it on Instagram and then let that carry into Facebook with the tags? What if they're not on Instagram, but they are on Facebook? They're the ones that are going to know how to go in and edit a post so that they could add a tag for a group. Maybe they know that this funder is on LinkedIn, but they can't find them anywhere else. They're going to understand like the fastest way to figure all that out and make it so that it's visible to the funder. If you give them the right information, hey, here's the list of 10 funders that I want us to try and thank on our socials at some point this year, or here's the 5 funders that I want us, if we're talking about the after school tutoring program, I want to somehow make sure these 5 funders are acknowledged, tagged wherever appropriate. That's a great way for them to know that you're thinking about them outside of when you're asking for money again. And lastly, who is out and about in the community at meetings and special events and fundraisers and ribbon cuttings and fill in the blank for all the different things that your colleagues are involved in? Probably a really long list, probably a really diverse list. And there are likely grant makers interacting with your colleagues in those community spaces. So doing a little bit of some social network mapping. All right, what sort of organizations are you in as like your off the clock time, some of your volunteer work? And okay, how about you? And let's just keep a list of like, where are we active as a team so that we can think about, wait, you might be seeing a grant maker at that Rotary committee meeting every Monday. Just for nothing. Like, I just want to make sure that you know that like we're trying to connect with them, or I want to make sure that you know that we got a grant from them 6 months ago and like they're really excited about funding the hot meal delivery program. If it ever comes up, you just say thank you. Right? They don't have to be ready to make an ask. Just, hey, I know that you're with that foundation. I just wanted to say thank you. It's so fantastic to have your support. Done. Back to like whatever the topic at hand is. It's just a nice social thank you. All of those are ways that your team can help make the stewardship work easier and, more importantly, more authentic, more human. Now, some folks are not comfortable with different interactions with funders. I've got, like I said, a long list on the screen here of what it could be. But if you tell someone that you might interact with a funder at a conference or at a community event, and be like, I'm not sure what I want to say. Okay, well, if that's the case, we absolutely can help people prepare. So you could build these for yourself, or you could build them for other people. Having talking points, having an elevator pitch about what you've got going on. What are your great humble brag type things about the programs or about the organization right now? And so I'm wondering, how many of you have an elevator pitch already set for your priority program or project you need grant funding for? Could you let me know? I'm going to put a quick delineator here in the chat box. Let me type that in. Okay. How many of you already have some sort of elevator pitch ready? Y for yes, S for sort of, N for no in the public chat. Do you already have some form of an elevator pitch ready to go for the priority program or project you want grant funding for? Okay. Sort of is a good start. That's a really good start. I'm going to give you some details here. So maybe you want to grab like a pad of sticky notes. Maybe you want to get a notebook, something that you can start to jot down some ideas, because it might build your existing sort of, but it might also be your building blocks to get something like this started. You're going to find information about the talking points in our Grantmaker relationship guide that is part of your handouts for the course today. When we think about our talking points, we want to have either ourselves or our colleagues prepared to handle potentially 3 topics. You, as the person who's doing grants, should be prepared for all 3 of these. If it's for your colleagues who are out, conferences, events, community things, we're going to be primarily focused on the first 2. So the first thing we want is for folks to feel comfortable introducing themselves. I know, like, we know who we are, right? But what we want to practice is what is the right super short version of who you are and who you're with. If I were to say, hi, I'm Diane Leonard, and I'm with C.H. Leonard Consulting and Grant Writing Services, and we're based in far, far upstate New York, and we've been doing this work for more than 20 years. There's a lot of oversharing in the introduction. Like good information, factual information, a little too much. Hi, I'm Diane. I'm the owner of D.H. Leonard Consulting. It's so nice to meet you. Way less. Silly example, it's about me, but that way I can make it more authentic for you. If you're meeting a funder, they need to know your first name. They need to know the context of what organization you're with. That's enough. If you want, no, it's enough, because what we want to do is just give them a little bit of like, why are we talking? And what we really want to get into is something that is connecting the dots for them about why we're awesome and why we're a fit. So if we're in person, we're not going to have a lot of time. We're going to have a quick 20, 30 seconds before we get into the elevator or while we're standing in the coffee line at an event. You may have done a lot of research about this group and have really like detailed notes about their past grants that they've given and why it's a good fit and their dollar amounts the right size. And they funded this group over here for almost the same thing. They should really fund us. You're going to have lots of good statements of reason for why they should. But I want you to think about, how can you quickly say, we do this and we are aligned with you because. How can you quickly, in a sentence or two, say something about how awesome you are and what you do and why the funder cares? Why is it a good fit? Literally pretend like you are going to be getting into an elevator. I mentioned I was at Grant Summit, 31-story hotel. So it took, I mean, even if you were in like the express floors to get to the top, you still had a good like minute and a half from the time you got in and the doors closed till you got to the very top. It was a pretty good size elevator and building. You might not have that much time, but it's got to be tight so that you could have that quick interaction. The third part of talking points is for if that introduction goes well. You're like, oh yeah, that does sound. I've heard of your group before. I've heard of that program before. If there's some sort of positive interaction, and it feels appropriate to ask any sort of question, you might be prepared with something. Usually, this third one is going to be reserved though for if you're having a phone conversation with a grant maker or if you're doing email follow-up with a grant maker. So you might have a really nice, pleasant elevator pitch interaction and then follow up with questions like this over email or phone later. But best to be prepared now so that you've got some things to discuss in case the conversation goes really well. These three things and what you're talking about, what is it that you want to highlight? What we really are doing is probably taking some of our program design. What are those key activities that we're going to do? What are the strategies that we put into place in our community? What is the impact that we're going to create? We want our grant makers not to know all our nitty gritty of how we do the work in just our real quick meeting and interaction, but if they could remember or hear from us, we do this to get that. So we do these strategies in order to get this impact. That would be a pretty good win if that's what they could remember. That's high level logic model stuff. In fact, it's a lot like theory of change, if any of you have heard me talk about that in other Native Learning Center webinars. Your theory of change, we do this to get that, makes for a really good start for an elevator pitch. Your logic model is more nuanced, isn't quite as high level, but from there you could also say, because your activities, we do these activities in order to get these outcomes, or we do these activities in order to get this impact. We could use either, but our talking points could come straight from our theory of change or our logic model. So what I'd love to have you think about is how it's going to sound. I want you to actually take a quick 30 seconds here, again, whether it's sticky notes or a notebook or literally like the back of an envelope, anything that you have right at hand. If you want to do digital, grab your phone, type it into your phone in a notes app or open another tab on your computer and type it there, totally fine too. But I want you to jot some notes for yourself. Pick a grant maker or pick a type of grant maker. Maybe don't think about the grant maker by name, but think about the grant maker that's funding your type of work. Here, you know what's going to help make this a whole lot better for me? I want to know what type of project or program you need to get grant funding for right now. So if you could type into the public chat, what is the priority project or program that you need to get grant funding for in 2026? Is it infrastructure? Is it, I mentioned hot meal delivery program a few times. Is it after school tutoring? What is it? You just tell me, because why am I making it up? Let me hear what you're focused on. What is it you need to find grant funding for in 2026? That way I'll have a sense of what your elevator pitch is focused on. No right or wrong reason, answer, anything you type. I mean, this should hopefully be one of the easier questions for you for the day because it's just, what's the work you're writing about? I'll give you a second to type that into the chat, and then I'll explain what we're going to practice. These days, if I'm practicing my pitch, I'm part of our local Rotary Club, And I'm raising money from grant makers and individuals, and I'm thinking about our River Santa program. It's like spans the entire St. Lawrence River, goes inland from that. It's 5 different school districts, school backpack programs, food pantries, and like 500 children show up to get gifts at this event. And so, yeah, I'm getting to be pretty good about my elevator pitch there, but always room to practice, especially because it's my first year being in charge of their fundraising as a volunteer. How fun. So I'm going to be doing this too. I'm going to mute myself so that you don't hear me. But all right, Nick has reintroduction back into the workforce for the program that is a focus for early 2026. Great. So now you know what I'm thinking about. We know what Nick is thinking about. If anyone else wants to share in the public chat, what is your priority program or project? That'd be great. I want you to pretend that there is a grant maker who is the best fit. You're super excited to run into one of their board members, one of their decision makers at an event. And yeah, you're going to get the opportunity to connect with them. So, what will that sound like? I'm going to put 1 minute on the clock. And the way I'm going to time it is using my handy cell phone. So we're going to be able to pay attention to the clock that way. You might want to have a stopwatch on your phone as well. That would be fine. But we're going to have just 60, 1 minute, 60 seconds. We're going to have just 60 seconds because what I want you to pretend is that you're hanging out at that coffee line in a conference or at a big meeting. And so that doesn't give you much time. Somebody's filling their coffee cup in front of you. They're maybe putting a little cream, a little sugar in. Somebody else next to you is filling the hot water, putting their tea bag in it. You don't have a lot of time to chat. Plus, you're now all holding hot beverages. So, my hands are full. Everyone wants to go sit down. I want you to say out loud. Now I get it. Like maybe if you're in a workspace with other people, this might feel a little awkward. They might wonder why you're talking to your computer. Okay, you could whisper it or just think it. But I really would love for you to verbally, out loud, in 1 minute or less, pretend. Put your hand out. Why are you a good fit? What is it like? Do your introduction. We're a great group. We do this to get that. And we think that that would be a really great fit with your organization. What does that sound like? 1 minute or less. And you might say, I'm gonna be done fast. Okay, fine. Great. If you finish in less than 1 minute, all the gold stars, super excited about it. But I want you to hear the words that when you are unscripted are actually what you say. So I'm going to put 1 minute on the clock. I'm going to mute myself because you're going to see I'm going to practice myself. Okay. 1 minute to practice your pitch. What would you want the grant maker to hear? Ready? Go. "25 seconds to go. "10 seconds to go. Time's up. How many of you practiced your pitch and finished it before I told you time was up? Go ahead on the public chat. Be like double hands up. Be like, yes, I did it. I practiced my pitch and I was in less than 1 minute. I could introduce who I was and what it is that we're doing, what makes us awesome. Let me know. Y for yes, you did it in under a minute. If you went over the 1 minute, it's okay. If you're like, it cut me off. But you have to think about what it's like character counting your grant application responses. What am I going to cut? What did I say that was not necessary? What might be filler? The reason that I ask you to verbally practice this out loud, and you're on your honor, right? I didn't say, let's all unmute and say it at the same time, or I'm not going to make you practice here live in front of folks. You didn't know that was going to happen, so I'm not going to do that. But the reason it's important to verbally practice is that many of us are used to writing about our organizations, and that's where we're comfortable. Saying it out loud when unscripted is what is authentic to the Grantmaker. If what we're saying is a memorized script, it's going to miss the authenticity that will engage the Grantmaker. If we ourselves are practicing, we are now better coaches for our other grant team members who might be the ones meeting folks out in the community. And we want to make sure that what they say is going to match the story we put in grant applications. We do this so that we get this impact. We create these results. We want those to be aligned stories. And some of our folks that are super passionate about our work might say all sorts of things in a really well-intentioned way, but not get to that main point of we do this in order to get this impact. That's what we want the funder to remember. All right, so we are going to practice one more time. But this time, I'm going to set the clock for 30 seconds. I know, I feel like I should have ducked as I said 30 seconds. I want you to do the same thing. Some of you sort of got under a minute. Some of you definitely got under a minute. I want you to see if you can get it under 30 seconds. What does it sound like? I am going to have to cut something. I've done this exercise before, so that was not fair. I definitely finished under a minute. I did not finish in under 30 seconds. So right now I'm like, hey, what am I going to eliminate? I don't know. We're going to see what it sounds like. It's going to be different, but I've got 30 seconds on my timer. Feel free to have a timer going on yourself. We're going to do 30 seconds, same thing. Out loud, quick introduce yourself to the Grantmaker. Why are you awesome? What are you doing in order to get what sort of impact? Are you ready? On your mark. I'm going to mute again. Get set. Go. All right, I just tripped all over myself. Your 30 seconds is up, and that was an awkward version for me. I was so worried about being in 30 seconds that I don't even, like the middle part of my 30 seconds, if you could have heard it, I'm like, what are the words that I'm saying? Now, I'm going to have to practice that some more. It's a really good thing we had this today. I'm like, my minute version, I was all right. I felt like that was okay. The 30-second one, I literally, I was tripping all over myself on that one, tripped right on my feet. I was like, no, not it. I'm going to have to practice again later. How did that feel for the shorter version versus the longer one? You don't have to tell me if that was incredibly awkward for you too. It's okay if it was just me. But it just reiterated for me that I need to practice more. Yep, because I'm going to be putting it to the test when I'm out at, at another meeting tomorrow. And okay, see, and I didn't mean to create stress. Sorry, Angelica, but it is. That time pressure, you're like, I only have their attention for like less than a minute. I better get it right. The more we practice, the more natural it feels. Now, here's the other added bonus. There's us practicing, we become comfortable. We're practicing so we can help our colleagues become comfortable. It also starts to fine tune the things we might write in our application. So they're going to be nice and consistent than when we write our teeny tiny character counted little summary at the top of an application form. So it'll start to actually play out in our text that we write as well. Yeah, Nick, in 30 seconds, you're right. Like our speech pattern can feel a little rushed, sort of like someone took our normal speaking speed, took the knob, and yep, it's like they were on Audible and they went, it's not regular one speed, 1.5, 1.75 to 2.25. Yeah, that's one way that we can get more out in less. So those are really good observations for what it felt like. Will you be the one that gets to use your pitch all the time? It depends on each organization for if grant pros do or don't. But if you practice and you help your colleagues practice, all of a sudden you are building a team of folks that can help be stewards. Let's think about our reporting though for a second and why. You're like, Diane, I thought we were just talking about relationships today. Yes, but I had mentioned that we don't want our grant makers to feel like an ATM, and I want our grant makers to not be surprised when it comes time for a report. Don't want any of that to happen. And so we need to think about how we interact with our grant makers during the grant award period. I want us to be stellar students. I want us to get an A+ if we were being graded. I want each of you to get a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. However you're being judged, I want it to be that you are top of class. And what that means with a grant maker is that we have to think about all the different ways we interact and how it is that we can express gratitude and meet our obligations. One of the things in terms of not treating a grant maker like an ATM, not having them feel transactional, is communicating with them outside of the application. So what's one of the most likely things that will happen? There is some sort of question during implementation. Something isn't quite going as planned. This is a great opportunity for you. Not that you should be excited that things aren't going quite as planned. Your colleagues might not understand why you're excited, but this is a great opportunity to not treat your grant maker in a transactional way. That's kind of funny, isn't it? You're like, you're excited that it's not going well? Well, because you just checked the box. If you reach out to a grant maker via phone, over email, I say phone because I just love that old school idea of talking to the grant maker. That really stands out. They cared so much about us that they picked up the phone to say, hey, I'd love to have a conversation. Maybe you email before to ask for the conversation. Fine, that's good too. But that you want to talk to them about, hey, so here's what's happening. We had more snow days than we expected. And so we actually didn't get to have as many actual days for our program. Therefore, our outputs are a little low, like the actual number of students that we're serving is lower this year because of that. And, you know, we're letting you know, like we just got, now with that final snow day, right? Things are just different. So we wanted to check in. Here's what we're thinking for how we're going to change things, or here's what we're proposing with those leftover funds, whatever it is. You're letting them know as quickly as you're able. You're asking questions about your ideas, asking for input on your plans. If you need to make budgetary changes, you're asking. This is about engaging them, letting them know what's happening, seeing what they think about how you might amend things if needed. We don't want to ask for forgiveness later when we turn in our report because we'll have now surprised them. Be like, well, why'd you wait till now in July to tell me about all your snow days that happened in January? Right? That doesn't build good relationships. Then they're like, oh, this is just transactional. You needed to submit a report, you submitted a report. That's not what we want. So reaching out to a grant maker when things are happening in a program or project that might not be exactly what you thought they would be, the sooner you communicate, the better. That is you excelling. That is you treating the grant maker with respect and not like a transactional ATM. When I have this conversation about the ATM, I always think about my dear friend and colleague, Max Del Senor. He's the Assistant Director for the Northern New York Community Foundation, and he loves to talk about next level gratitude. Because when he says that it has no boundaries, well, what has no boundaries? Gratitude has no boundaries. As a grantee, extending a thank you beyond the report can carry tremendous value with a funder. Not secret sauce, not some big, wow, that's quite the statement, something real prophetic. No, this is pretty straightforward. You might say it almost feels like common sense to many of us. But this is not what Max experiences on a daily basis. Because people get really busy taking care of their community members and keeping the lights on and the doors open and meeting all the community needs. And they forget to do anything related to gratitude. So if we think about the way that you're stewarding your relationships with grant makers, how many of you in your tribal organizations have some form of individual giving program, some way that a community member could donate funds, could donate goods, could give something to your tribal organization? If they so desired, they could donate either money, goods, even time, right? They can give something. Could you let me know if you have a program like that in place that you can receive and give gratitude, give thanks for someone in your community who has donated something, money, time, or goods? Y for yes in the public chat, N for no. Do you have something like that in place? You might wonder, why is Diane asking about if we have any sort of individual donation program, any sort of way that our community members can, even like this time of year, right? Maybe where it's getting cold where I am. So different organizations are collecting donations of coats and mittens and hats. So any sort of donation. Yeah, okay, good. I can see in the public chat. Yeah, you're like, yes, Diane, we do. Good. I didn't want to make assumptions, so I wanted to confirm. All right. So those are individuals who are making a choice to support you and the work that you're doing. And sometimes maybe you even ask those individuals for support. You make an outreach. You make an outreach on Facebook. You make an outreach over email. You make an outreach maybe in the mail. Now, I get that this might seem pretty like, woo, old school. Mail? Also the time of year where we start to get a lot of year-end appeals in both my business and my professional mailboxes. I want you to think about what happens if you go to your personal mailbox at the end of your workday. It's not the end of your workday yet. Don't get me in trouble with any supervisors. So like, don't go to your mailbox now. Workday is not done, but let's pretend it's the end of our workday. We've gone to our mailbox. And in it, well, oh, it's Thursday. That means I'm going to get my super cute little Thousand Island Sun newspaper. So I'm excited about that being in my mailbox today. But also, I'm going to pretend, I'm guessing it's likely that I'm going to have at least one year-end solicitation, if not more. If I'm really lucky, I might have like some sort of handwritten note. Oh, that would just make my day. Those are so rare. But probably, yeah, you're right. There's like some bills and some other like stuff. But what about the solicitation from, let's pretend it's an organization, a nonprofit in your community. So it's not your tribal organization that's asking you for money, rather it's some other nonprofit organization in your community. It could be an animal shelter, it could be a youth serving program, it could be a faith-based organization, you pick, doesn't matter. But you have never given to this group before. And so you are looking at the envelope and wondering, I wonder how they got my mailing address. Like, my name's right. It's not a bulk mail thing. You open it up and they have asked you for $250. You've never donated to them before. You've never volunteered with them. you're not sure how you're on their mailing list. Maybe they bought a list. You're not sure. But you know who they are. You recognize the name. Maybe. Do you give to them for this unsolicited request for support? Let me put a quick little symbol there in the chat box as a delineator. What do you think? What do you do? This is a safe space. I promise. We're recording the session, but not what you say in the chat. So like, what do you do with this solicitation that was unexpected? Somebody has asked you for $250. You were surprised. Do you pull out your checkbook or open your Venmo or your PayPal and send them $250? You might. That could be your choice. Let me know in the public chat if that's your choice. Do you put it straight to the recycling or shredding pile? Also an option. Do you, because you recognize the name, do a little bit of research and maybe send them $50? Do you realize that on their letterhead is one of your dear friends who you didn't know volunteered for them and therefore decide to maybe send them $25, $50 in honor of the work your friend's doing? Those are that's the entire range of answers that I usually get when I ask this question. But I open my checkbook or I make that digital donation of like the full amount, pretty rare. Because people are surprised. They're not committed to the cause yet. They're like, wait, what? Why are you asking me for this? I haven't shown engagement like with your work. They're surprised. Okay, that was transactional, wasn't it? It was. You are right. So you personally receiving that in your inbox felt transactional. Do you think a grant maker who receives a request from you, now this is not true on the government side, I've got to set this aside for this statement. This one's about all the private funders, private foundations, community foundations, public foundations, corporate foundations, that whole group. If they receive requests from groups that they don't know at all, they're surprised. Yes, here I am talking about the rapidly increasing volume of applications. So the poor grant makers are being surprised left and right, hundreds of times in every application cycle. But here is your competitive advantage. You know what it feels like to be surprised. You just felt that in the theoretical example at your own mailbox, and you know that it didn't feel great. People are granting to people. That's why stewardship is so important. Out of a pile of 150, out of a pile of 450, out of that pile of 900 foundations this regional funder got, if they recognize your name, it might not be that you had a deep conversation with them, but if they recognize your name, what do you think the odds are that they will read yours versus the 250, the 650, that they have no idea who they are, completely unknown to them? Some recognition will help. Having a real conversation, like an interaction, yes, bonus, bonus, bonus. But having some interaction, the start of stewardship, the start of relationship building, is going to go a very long way in standing out in this incredibly competitive time. So when we think about standing out, you might say, well, we got a grant from them once, or we interacted with them once, haven't talked to them in a while. There are passive ways that you can make sure that you are putting yourselves continuously on your grant maker's awareness screen so that they're aware, somewhat dangerously knowledgeable, perhaps, about what you're doing. Some of the things that you can do that help them feel more aware, that help ensure that really they're paying attention, not just sending them your newsletter, physical or digital, but putting those notes either over an email that you forward or like a handwritten note with the mailed newsletter. That will make you stand out in the pile of other passive communication they get. If they fund you, putting your recognition on all the appropriate printed and digital sources and sending them copies of it once you have printed it or produced it is another way that you stay on their awareness radar for what you're doing. Even if you are not going to interact on social media, following their accounts is another way that you may start to be on their radar as well, or stay to like maybe get onto or to stay on their awareness radar. Those are pretty passive ways that we could interact, that we could engage, that we could stay kind of in their view. Any form of recognition that you give a grant maker would be a great way. You're like, again, Diane, I'm worried about capacity. I'm not real sure what it is we're going to do so we don't end up in this transactional space, but I want to stay, on their radar. I want them to be aware that we're great. If you say that this program is funded in part and you've got the funder's name and it ends up in digital or physical print, pushing it directly to them. Wanted to make sure that you saw this latest newsletter that was about the program that you have funded. Thank you again for your support. So grateful. That is a big green check mark that I would give you in terms of stewardship and not being transactional with your grant maker. You're not asking them for anything. There's nothing they have to do. Nothing at all. They're just going to have warm fuzzies because you have told them their great work, their great funding is supporting your great work, and you're showing them how you were expressing your gratitude to them as a funder very publicly. Now, if you wanted to try and do something a little heavier in terms of the time it'll take, but are some of the more active forms of stewardship, you could invite multiple grant makers in your community for a site visit. You don't have to do individual one-on-one funder site visits unless you really have the capacity to do so, but treat it more like an open house style and invite a number of funders in at one time. That, I get it, takes a fair amount of prep work and people are going to be worried and cleaning up the programmatic space before you would invite people in, but that way, at least if you're going to do it, you get the benefit of multiple people coming in at one time. If you're having events or programs, performances, letting the funders know that they are welcome to join you. They may or may not attend. They might have rules about whether or not they attend, but they know that you're thinking about them. So you're using existing work that you and your team are already doing to then create some stewardship opportunities, some reasons for outreach. Remember how I told you how excited I would be if I had a handwritten letter in my mailbox? I don't even mean letter. That I just mean like a little cute note card. Somebody just even saying, "Oh, I was thinking about you. This made me laugh," or something. The fact that somebody takes the time these days to write out a note card and to find a stamp, that means that you were thinking about them. Like, oh wow, they cut out this newspaper article and they put it in and they took the time to like write why they thought of us. You might say, I could have emailed them the digital version of said thing, but I actually had the physical magazine or I had the physical paper. I would send them the physical thing. Those are the sort of things, if you have a mailing address for the funder that gets circulated around offices, oh, now that's a multi-touch point thing for stewardship. It might not just be one person who saw it, it might be multiple. What a win. And certainly you could interact on social media. It's an option. You don't have to, but that way also when folks are interacting, that tends to be what at least members of the funding team are aware of. And then they might actually start to pay a little bit more attention to you if you're tagging them in the comments. You might get a little bit of love from that interaction. They might tell other members of their team about it. But I get it. These last few that I mentioned, the site visits and the open houses, the idea of social media, these are things that take extra time, don't they? They're not necessarily what you have the capacity to add. And I understand that. But something, anything that is personalized will help your grant maker feel less like an ATM, and more like a funding partner. Now, here's the other thing that's important to remember is that grant makers talk. Did you know that? Grant makers talk to each other. And so you can develop a reputation in the community based on interactions with just one funder. Yes, the way I said that, it could sound negative, but it's on the positive side. Grant makers talk. And if grant makers talk, what are they going to talk about? Yeah, maybe if there's like something that's like negative, like, oh, really had a bad experience, but they're more likely to want to talk about the positive. Oh, we just had a fantastic experience with this one grantee. This is what happened. They had some changes in their program. They communicated with us right away. I just got a mailing from them with 5 thank you letters that were handwritten from the scholarship recipients we supported. How cool. Those are the sort of things that funders talk about when they go out to lunch, when they're at meetings together. I used to be part of a program officer. It was our program officer round table lunch. We would all bring in, they'd order in lunch. Everybody would get to pay for their own, but like we'd all hang out and talk. There were like 10 of us about what was going on. In this case, I was in the Detroit community. We would all talk about what was going on in the Metro Detroit community as funders. And I thought, I wonder if after COVID, if those still happen. It was reaffirmed for me the other day. A colleague of mine that is based in Phoenix said she was having lunch in a restaurant recently, and in walked a table full of grant makers and sat just like 2, 3 tables over. And so she couldn't hear what they were saying, but she knew from her work that they were all grant makers. And so for me, I'm like, oh, that reaffirmed that indeed, yes, grant makers are still going out to lunch together and they're chatting about like what's happening because it's a strong network, just like you would with like other colleagues in your community. And the other thing it reaffirmed, well, for her, was that she was going back to that restaurant as much as she could. She's like, oh, I wonder if this is like where everybody goes. Good networking. Think about how funders talk to each other. So your good stewardship work with one might actually influence what someone else in your community or region knows about you. Now, that comment certainly doesn't play out if you're talking about like big national funders, but on that local, regional level, it really does. I wanted to go back to those members of your grant team who are in leadership, whether it's employee leadership or elected leadership or more like an past experience leadership, an advisory committee, anyone that has your organization's interest in their heart and want to help, but aren't always sure how and where to help. And so the idea of these engagement techniques is that you want the networks and connections of these individuals to help you be awesome, help you to stay connected, help to maybe check the box on like one sort of stewardship activity over the course of a year. We can't rely on these type of networks exclusively, but they can certainly be like an extra added bonus. Sort of like if having cherries on your ice cream sundae is a flavor preference, that's sort of what this engagement technique can be. So I get this particular language from what a lot of fundraising and development colleagues will talk about. They'll say that they have board buddies for individual donors or for major donors. Has anyone ever heard that language before? Let me know in the public chat if you've heard that. This is something that is definitely more fundraising technique talk than grant talk, but I'm bringing it into the grant space because if it is language that your leaders, your advisory committee members, your board, if they're already familiar with it and comfortable with it, it might not feel like a stretch then for them to help you with it in the grant space. So the idea of a board buddy is that you're finding those awesome leaders that are well connected within your organization and your community. And you are not asking them to make asks for you. They don't have to write the grant. They don't have to be ready to give the full set of talking points and have all the questions ready to ask the grant maker. Rather, you are trying to utilize the strength of their network and their communities in order to help you have warmer connections that you can use your stewardship techniques with. So one of the things we like to use is a very, very fancy form. That was me being sarcastic. We call it the Grantmaker Relationship Questionnaire, and it's part of your handout in your Grantmaker Relationship Guide. The idea is that you put on this document the name of the grantmaker where you are trying to find a connection. And you ask your group of networked leaders if they know anyone at that organization. Better yet, if you do more than list the name of the grantmaker, but you list the staff and the board of said grantmaker. If you really don't know, if you couldn't find it online anywhere, if it wasn't in their 990, all right, maybe you have to skip it. Some like corporate foundations, right? It's not transparent who's in charge. But for most grant makers, you can find some staff contact information. You can find some leadership information. So I encourage you to list as many of the people as you can find, because I'm more likely to tell you, oh, I know that person. I know them from fill in the blank. Then if you put a funder name and that's all you give me, I'll be like, oh, I don't know who works there. Do I? And like, I'll get stuck and I'll probably just say no. So if you can give me the actual list of the names for the people that are there, you're more likely to get some sort of positive response. And this is played out. We've been using this form, as fancy as it is, for like a decade, basically. Yeah. And it does produce stronger results than asking in any boardroom, hey, does anyone know someone at, like in this case, if we said, hey, does anyone know someone at the Annie E. Casey Foundation? Probably crickets. People will be like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Who's in charge there? Now, we could find all sorts of information about their current staff and board list from their website or from their IRS 990, and we could type it into their Grantmaker relationship questionnaire. Pretend I am said board member. I love being on LinkedIn. It's like my place that I like to connect with folks. If we're not connected there, please feel free to reach out. But so what happens is that, okay, pretend I'm the board member and I'm like, you know that I'm active on LinkedIn. So you might say, Diane, I know you're active on LinkedIn. Here's our Grantmaker relationship questionnaire. Could you check a few of these top leaders for me and see if you have any potential connections that you would be willing or comfortable making an introduction to? And so what do? I type in Lisa Lawson. This is actually a screen grab from my LinkedIn account. I wanted to make this as real as possible. And Lisa, who runs that foundation, is a second connection to me. I have 42 mutual connections. I'm not going to ask all 42 to make an introduction. I'm going to look at the list of mutual connections and I'm going to think about, now, how do I know these folks and who is going to be best positioned to make a warm introduction for me? Now, because Lisa's in my second circle of connections, I technically, yes, I could click that blue connect button, but with a funder, I don't want a cold connect. I want a warm introduction. Absolutely want a warm one. So that's how you can use the board buddies idea in order to get to someone in a grant making organization that you really want to have a one-on-one connection to. But for now, you're going to use those degrees of connection idea instead to get that warm introduction. What you're really trying to do, you want your board buddies to be like your matchmakers. I would love to meet grant makers that are focused on youth programming in the Northeast region. I really want support talking with grant makers that are focused on sustainable development. What is it you want? So think about it like, who would you want to be matched to? Come up with a few funders that you want to put in front of your leaders, in front of your board, and present them with some different Grantmaker relationship questionnaires. Don't give them a list of like 12 different funders and a whole bunch of staff. Really think about who you are most desiring to be connected to. Maybe you do this once a quarter. And then ask, get your responses back, see who is best connected. Maybe you're going to get lucky. You're going to have multiple contacts that come forward as options for introductions. Your grant maker might be open to, like, it might feel right for them to make like an e-introduction. Dear grant maker, I'd love to introduce you to Diane, and she's with, and Phil, that could happen, right? But it could be that you find the connection and your board member, your senior leader says, all right, now I know who you want me to talk to. I'd love to talk to them first at our Lions Club meeting next Thursday and just kind of warm things up before I introduce them. What should I say? To which you can go back to your 30-second talking points and be like, here's what I think might make sense if you want to try it. See how that all came full circle there? You got to use your talking points that you practiced earlier in order to help empower others in your organization to make connections so that you can think about, what does it sound like? What does it look like if I'm trying to have at least one stewardship interaction with grant makers in a year that has nothing to do with directly asking for money or directly reporting? If we do that, like, I'm not setting the bar super high, one non-application, non-report stewardship touch with a grant maker, whether they're current or anticipated hopeful future, will make your grant maker not feel like an ATM. I literally could talk about grants all day. Brooke and the Native Learning Center team are used to that. They know it's true. I see I just got a question coming in. I'm going to take care of that one in a second, but feel free to start typing other questions into the public chat. You can also always email me afterwards if you have a question. My email is diane@dhleonardconsulting.com, or wherever you want to talk about stuff on socials. I think I was pretty clear. I love LinkedIn. So like, that's a great spot. If you don't want anything else in your inbox, feel free to reach out there. Let's see. We have a question from Angelica. Could sending something to a grant maker as a thanks be seen as negative? I'm racking my brain. I don't think so. Grant makers, okay, let me say this. If you know that they have a preference for all electronic, just email me things. Then I wouldn't want to send them a thank you that is a handwritten thank you note, because they told me their preference was for like everything to be electronic. They're a paperless office, they're fully remote, don't send us paper. I guess that could be negative if I ignored what they had told me or what they had stated somewhere about like their delivery preference for information. That could have a negative impact. But even then, they still would understand the positive intent behind it. But I do definitely want to make sure that what you do is honoring their capacity and preference for method for communication. So I would keep that in mind. Great follow-up question, Angelica, here. Are grant makers allowed to receive gifts? 99.9% of the time, the answer is a firm no. Absolutely not. That is considered to be a conflict for them. And when you say gifts, they don't even mean just like physical things, a book, a plant. Those are, nope, absolutely not for almost all grant makers. For some, they even have policies around if they, for example, came to your performance, they can't take a free ticket, they have to pay for a ticket. If you wanted to invite them to your gala dinner, they cannot take a free ticket, they would have to pay for a ticket. For those types of policies, grant makers have some nuances, so you can't assume one way or the other, rather you could ask. So, but in terms of physical gifts, I would say you're better off just not to, because it's very rare that they would say yes. But if there was something in kind you were trying to let them do, attend a performance, an event, a dinner, ask. So I would really love to comp your ticket so that you could come to the performance. Are you allowed to receive it? now they know that you're thinking about them. They know that you would love to give it to them for free, and they'll tell you if they can't. They won't be offended. Fantastic questions. Thank you so much for asking. All right. I think I got to all the questions. You know that you can reach out over email or social if you want, if there's any follow-up questions after today. But I think, Brooke, we're back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Diane. Another incredible webinar on the books, and great questions down in the chat, you guys. Love to see the engagement. If you wouldn't mind just a little bit more engagement for us, I have put the link to today's webinar feedback survey into the chat for you. It is anonymous, so no worries about your name or your email being connected to anything. It just takes about 2 to 3 minutes to complete. It helps us at the Native Learning Center know what is working and what we can improve upon. And we do share the feedback with our instructors as well. So it helps everybody all around, the audience, the instructors, and us, the host. We hope you can join us for our next webinar. It's actually going to be in 2 weeks. This will be on coaching and mentoring with Dr. William R. Latchford. And feel free to check out this as well as our other recorded webinars. We do post them to our YouTube channel now in the Cathedra webinar archive. There is a link to that in the shared notes, and I am copying and pasting that into the chat for you right now. We hope you can check out our other upcoming training events. We post about them all the time. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. If you're somebody who likes to listen to podcasts, we have an in-house produced one, the Hope a Thing, a Native American podcast. You can listen to that wherever you listen to your podcasts. And also, if you prefer to actually watch the guests get interviewed, we post those videos to our YouTube as well. But otherwise, that is all we have for you today, folks. Thank you again, Diane, for an amazing webinar. Thank you, everybody who attended today and for your thoughtful questions. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording now, but I am going